The gunshots echoed through the valley as Nora Walton watched helplessly from behind an overturned wagon, her heart pounding against her ribs like a wild Mustang. Blood stained the rocky soil of the Utah Territory, her father's blood, spilled by the ruthless gang that had emerged from the shadow of the red rock formations surrounding their small homestead outside Moab. The year was 1876, and at 22 years old, Nora had never imagined she would witness such brutality. Her father had warned her about the dangers lurking in this untamed country, but nothing could have prepared her for the Blackwell Gang's swift and merciless attack. "Search everything," barked a man with a scar cutting across his left cheek. "Clayton says the old man's been sitting on gold from that mine claim of his." Nora pressed her palm against her mouth to stifle a sob as the bandits ransacked the home she and her father had built with their bare hands after her mother's passing 3 years prior. They took everything, the money hidden in the floorboards, her mother's jewelry, the deed to their land, even the horses from the corral. Most devastating of all, they stole the silver locket containing the only photograph she had of her mother. When the bandits finally rode away, leaving a cloud of dust and destruction in their wake, Nora crawled to her father's side. His eyes stared vacantly at the brilliant blue Utah sky. "I promise, Pa," she whispered, closing his eyelids with trembling fingers. "I'll get it all back. Everything they took, I promise." But promises were easily made and difficult to keep in this harsh land. Nora buried her father as the sun set, casting long shadows across the desert landscape. She stood alone, with nothing but the clothes on her back and a burning desire for justice. 3 days later, exhausted and grimy from the journey, Nora stumbled into Moab with nothing but determination keeping her on her feet. The small settlement was little more than a collection of wooden buildings clustered around a dusty main street, but it was her only hope for finding help. She pushed open the door of the sheriff's office, the hinges creaking in protest. "Sheriff." Her voice sounded foreign to her own ears, raspy and weak from thirst and grief. Sheriff Miles Harrison looked up from his desk, his graying mustache twitching with concern as he took in her bedraggled appearance. "Miss, you all right? The Blackwell Gang attacked our homestead," Nora said, her voice cracking. "They killed my father and took everything we had." The sheriff's expression hardened. "The Blackwells, you say? Sit down, miss. Tell me everything." Nora recounted the brutal attack in halting sentences, watching the sheriff's face grow increasingly grim. "I'm real sorry about your pa, Miss Walton," he said when she finished. "But I've got to be honest with you. Those men are wanted in 3 territories. They're dangerous, and I don't have the men to go after them." "Then what am I supposed to do?" Nora asked, desperation edging into her voice. The sheriff sighed, rubbing his weathered hand across his face. "There's a man who might be able to help. Name's Adam Quinn. Best tracker this side of the Mississippi. Been hunting the Blackwells for months now. Where can I find him? That's the thing. He finds you if he's of a mind to." The sheriff reached for a piece of paper. "I'll write down what happened. If Quinn comes through town, I'll make sure he gets this." Nora shook her head. "I can't just wait and hope, Sheriff. They took everything. Mrs. Donovan runs the boarding house down the street. Tell her I sent you. She might have some work to keep you fed until we figure something out." With no other options, Nora accepted the sheriff's suggestion. The kind-hearted Mrs. Donovan offered her a small room in exchange for help in the kitchen and laundry. Days turned into weeks as Nora worked from dawn until dusk, her hands cracking from lye soap and hot water, her back aching from scrubbing floors. Each night, she fell into an exhausted sleep, only to wake with the same hollow feeling in her chest. One evening, nearly a month after the attack, Nora was carrying a tray of food to the private dining room when she heard a deep voice that made her pause. "I tracked them through the canyons," the man was saying. "Lost their trail at the Colorado. They're heading north, most likely to Wyoming territory." Nora nudged the door open with her foot. 3 men sat around the table: the sheriff, the bank manager, Mr. Phillips, and a stranger whose presence seemed to fill the room despite his relaxed posture. "Your supper, gentlemen," Nora said, setting down the tray. The stranger looked up, and Nora found herself caught in the most penetrating gaze she'd ever encountered. His eyes were the color of storm clouds, set in a face tanned and weathered by sun and wind. A thin scar ran along his jawline, disappearing into the shadow of a neatly trimmed beard. He wasn't traditionally handsome, but there was something compelling about him that made it difficult for Nora to look away. "Thank you, Miss Walton," the sheriff said, breaking the moment. The stranger's eyebrow raised slightly at her name. "Walton, not related to James Walton by any chance?" Nora's heart stuttered. "He was my father. How did you know him?" "I didn't," the man replied, his voice as smooth and rich as good whiskey. "But I know the men who killed him." "You're Adam Quinn," Nora realized aloud. A slight nod confirmed her suspicion. "Sheriff Harrison told me what happened to your homestead. I'm sorry for your loss. Are you going after them?" Nora asked, forgetting her place as a serving girl, forgetting everything except the possibility of justice. "I am," Quinn answered simply. "Take me with you." The room fell silent. Sheriff Harrison cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Miss Walton, that's not no." Quinn's response was firm, brooking no argument. "They took everything from me," Nora insisted, her hands clenching into fists at her sides. "My father's pocket watch, my mother's locket, the deed to our land. I have a right to be there when you find them." "What you have is a death wish," Quinn said, his eyes never leaving hers. "The Blackwell Gang doesn't take kindly to survivors." "I can ride as well as any man," Nora countered. "I can shoot straight and I know the land. My father taught me how to track game." "Tracking game is not the same as tracking killers," Quinn said. "And these men will put a bullet in you before you can blink." "Then teach me," Nora challenged. "I'm not asking to fight them. I just want to be there. I need to see them face justice." Quinn studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he shook his head. "I work alone, Miss Walton, always have." "At least bring back what's mine," Nora said, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "The locket, please, it's all I have left of her." Something flickered in Quinn's eyes, a shadow of understanding, perhaps even compassion. He gave a curt nod. "I'll do what I can." It wasn't enough, but Nora knew it was all she would get from him. She curtsied stiffly and left the room, her mind racing with possibilities. The next morning, Nora rose before dawn and packed her meager belongings. She left a note for Mrs. Donovan, thanking her for her kindness and promising to return to settle her debt. Then she slipped out of the boarding house and made her way to the livery stable. The stable boy was just starting his morning chores when she arrived. "Miss Walton, what brings you here so early?" "I need a horse, Tommy," Nora said, counting out the small amount of money she'd managed to save. "The strongest one you've got." Tommy looked skeptical. "Mr. Quinn already took the best mount we had." "Quinn, when?" "About an hour ago, said he was heading north." "North?" "Toward Wyoming territory." Nora's determination solidified. "What else do you have?" 20 minutes later, Nora rode out of Moab on an aging bay mare named Penny. The horse wasn't fast, but she was steady, and that would have to be enough. Nora had a canteen of water, some jerky, and a small knife tucked into her boot. It wasn't much, but she hoped it would be enough to catch up to Quinn before he got too far ahead. She followed the main trail north, keeping her eyes peeled for signs of a lone rider. By midday, The sun beat down mercilessly, and Nora's skin felt tight and hot despite the bonnet shading her face. She had just stopped to give Penny some water when she heard the sound of approaching hoofbeats. Nora tensed, reaching for the knife in her boot, but relaxed when she recognized the rider Adam Quinn, returning on the trail she had been following. He reined his horse to a stop beside her, looking down with an expression that mingled irritation and grudging respect. "I figured you'd try something like this." Nora lifted her chin defiantly. "I'm not turning back." "I noticed," Quinn said dryly. "That mare won't make it 10 miles in this heat. She'll make it as far as I need her to." Quinn sighed, removing his hat to run a hand through his dark hair. "Miss Walton, this isn't some adventure from a dime novel. The men we're after won't hesitate to kill a woman. In fact, they might do worse before they're done." "Do you think I don't know that?" Nora's voice trembled with emotion. "I watched them murder my father in cold blood. I know exactly what they're capable of. Then you should know better than to chase after them." "I'm not chasing after them. I'm chasing after you," Nora corrected. "You're going to find them, and when you do, I want to be there." Quinn stared at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable beneath the shadow of his hat. Finally, he cursed under his breath. "If I take you as far as Green River, will you be satisfied? You can wait there while I track them into Wyoming." It wasn't ideal, but it was better than being sent back to Moab. "Yes, and you'll do exactly as I say when I say it?" "Yes." "No arguments, no questions, no foolish risks," Nora nodded solemnly. "I promise." Quinn didn't look entirely convinced, but he jerked his head toward the trail ahead. "We'll need to find you a better horse. There's a ranch about 5 miles up where we might be able to make a trade." As they rode, Nora studied her unexpected companion. Adam Quinn sat his horse with the easy grace of a man who'd spent most of his life in the saddle. He wore simple, practical clothes, a faded blue shirt, well-worn denim pants, and a leather vest. The only distinctive items were his boots, which appeared to be of fine quality, and the ornate silver handle of the revolver at his hip. "How long have you been tracking the Blackwell Gang?" Nora asked, breaking the silence. Quinn glanced at her as if weighing how much to share. 8 months, give or take." "Why, are you a lawman?" A humorless smile touched his lips. "No, madam, just a man with a purpose." "They hurt someone you care about," Nora guessed, recognizing the same cold determination she felt in her own heart. Quinn didn't answer directly. "Let's just say we have similar reasons for wanting to see justice done." They reached the ranch by mid-afternoon. The owner, a gruff man named Harlow, eyed Nora suspiciously but dealt fairly with Quinn, trading Penny for a younger, stronger pinto mare. "She's green," Harlow warned, "but she's got heart. Just need a firm hand on the reins." The new horse, which Nora named Spirit, proved to be exactly as described, spirited but manageable. They made good time for the rest of the day, stopping only when the sun began to dip below the horizon. Quinn found a sheltered spot near a small stream to make camp. He worked efficiently, gathering wood for a fire while Nora tended to the horses. When the flames were crackling merrily, Quinn produced a coffee pot and a small sack of beans from his saddlebags. "It's not much," he said, setting the coffee to boil, "but it's hot." "I'm grateful," Nora replied honestly. She hadn't realized how hungry she was until the aroma of coffee filled the air. They ate in companionable silence, the fire casting long shadows around their small camp. As the night deepened, Nora found herself studying Quinn's face in the firelight. There was a sadness there, hidden beneath his stoic exterior. "Who was she?" Nora asked softly. Quinn's head jerked up, his eyes narrowing. "Who?" "The person the Blackwells took from you." For a moment, Nora thought he wouldn't answer. Then he sighed, reaching into his shirt to pull out a worn photograph in a small wooden frame. He passed it to Nora wordlessly. The image showed a young woman with a gentle smile, her hand resting on the shoulder of a serious-looking boy of about 10. "Your family." "My sister and her son," Quinn replied, his voice tight. "Emma and Thomas. They had a small ranch in Colorado. Clayton Blackwell wanted the land for the water rights. When Emma refused to sell." He trailed off, but Nora could fill in the blanks. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, handing back the photograph. Quinn tucked it away carefully. "Thomas survived. He's with my aunt in Denver now." His eyes met hers across the fire. "That's why I couldn't let you come along, Miss Walton. I've seen what these men do. I couldn't have that on my conscience." "I understand your concern," Nora said, "but I need to see this through. Not just for justice, but for closure. Surely you can understand that." Quinn nodded slowly. "I do, but understanding doesn't make it any less dangerous." "Nothing worth doing is ever entirely safe," Nora countered. "My father used to say that." A ghost of a smile touched Quinn's lips. "Your father sounds like a wise man." "He was," Nora said, her throat tightening with grief. "He taught me everything: how to ride, how to shoot, how to survive out here. After my mother died, it was just the two of us against the world." "What was he doing in Moab?" Quinn asked. "It's not exactly prime farming country." "He had a silver claim in the LaSalle Mountains," Nora explained. "We were doing well, not rich, but comfortable. The claim was starting to produce. That's probably what drew the Blackwells to us." Quinn's expression darkened. "Clayton has a nose for other people's success. Did your father ever mention any dealings with them before the attack?" Nora shook her head. "No, but he had been concerned about claim jumpers. He'd been talking about hiring help to protect the mine." "The Blackwells probably had someone watching the claim," Quinn mused. "Once they knew it was valuable, they decided to take it." "Along with everything else we owned," Nora added bitterly. Quinn studied her across the fire, his eyes reflecting the dancing flames. "Get some rest, Miss Walton. We have a long ride ahead of us tomorrow." Nora nodded, wrapping herself in the blanket Quinn had provided. Despite her exhaustion, sleep was slow to come. Her mind kept returning to the photograph of Quinn's sister and nephew, to the pain she had glimpsed in his eyes. Perhaps they weren't so different after all. The next morning dawned clear and cool, a brief respite before the heat of the day set in. They broke camp efficiently, Quinn allowing Nora to take on her share of the work without comment. As they rode, Quinn began to point out signs of the trail: disturbed earth, where a horse had stumbled, broken twigs, a cigarette but not yet fully dissolved by rain. Nora listened intently, absorbing his knowledge like a sponge. "How did you learn to track like this?" she asked as they paused to water the horses at a small creek. "Army scouts," Quinn replied. "I served with them for 5 years after the war. You fought in the Civil War." Quinn nodded, his expression closing off slightly. "Union cavalry. I was young, joined up in '64 when I was 18, saw enough fighting to last a lifetime. And after the war, drifted west like a lot of men. Worked as a scout, a ranch hand, tried my hand at prospecting for a while." He shrugged. "Never stayed in one place too long until Emma needed help with her ranch. I was there for almost 2 years before." He trailed off, his jaw tightening. "Before the Blackwells," Nora finished softly. Quinn nodded, his eyes scanning the horizon. "We should keep moving. There's a trading post about 15 miles ahead. Might be able to get some information there." They reached the trading post by mid-afternoon. It was a simple log structure with a small stable attached, sitting at the crossroads of 2 well-traveled trails. A weathered sign proclaimed it, "Hanson's Trading Post ESD, 1868. As they dismounted, an older man with a shock of white hair emerged from the building, a shotgun held casually in his hands. "State your business," he called. Quinn raised his hand slightly to show he meant no harm. "Just looking for supplies and information, Mr. Hansen." The man squinted at them, then lowered his weapon. "Can't be too careful these days. Come on in." The interior of the trading post was cool and dim after the brightness of the day. Shelves lined the walls, stocked with essentials: flour, coffee, ammunition, tools, and various sundries. A small bar occupied one corner with 3 rough-hewn stools before it. "What can I get you folks?" Hansen asked, moving behind the bar. "Coffee, if you have it," Quinn replied. "And any news of riders heading north?" Hansen's bushy eyebrows rose. "Might have seen some men pass through, depends on who's asking." Quinn placed a silver dollar on the bar. "Just concerned citizens." Hansen eyed the coin, then pocketed it with a nod. "Group of 5 riders came through 2 days ago. Mean-looking bunch. One had a nasty scar on his face." "That's them," Nora said, unable to contain herself. "Did they say where they were headed?" Hansen gave her a curious look. "Didn't say, but they were asking about the fastest route to Rock Springs." "Wyoming territory," Quinn murmured. "They're moving fast." "Too fast for a woman to be chasing after," Hansen observed shrewdly. "Especially those men." Quinn's expression remained neutral. "We're not looking for trouble. Just need to find them." Hansen snorted. "Trouble's all those boys know how to give. Led by a man named Clayton, if I heard right. Cold eyes, that one. Like a rattler sizing up its next meal." Nora suppressed a shudder, remembering the casual way Clayton Blackwell had ordered his men to search their home, stepping over her father's body as if it were nothing more than an inconvenient obstacle. "They say anything else? Mention any plans?" Quinn pressed. Hansen shook his head. "Not that I heard, but they paid with gold dust, fresh too from the look of it." Quinn and Nora exchanged a meaningful glance. "Did they have other items with them?" Nora asked. "Perhaps a silver locket or documents." "Didn't see nothing like that," Hansen replied. "But they had plenty of supplies. Looked like they were planning to hole up somewhere for a while." Quinn nodded thoughtfully. "We'll need supplies too, and information about the trails to Rock Springs." As Hansen gathered the requested items, Nora stepped closer to Quinn. "If they're headed to Rock Springs, that must mean they're planning to work my father's claim," she whispered urgently. "Or sell it," Quinn replied. "Either way, we need to catch up to them before they can profit from it." They purchased enough supplies to last them several days, along with a detailed description of the fastest route to Rock Springs. As they prepared to leave, Hansen called after them. "Word of advice," he said, his weathered face serious. "Those men are killers. If you're smart, you'll let the law handle them." Quinn's expression hardened. "Sometimes the law doesn't reach far enough." They rode hard for the rest of the day, making camp only when it became too dark to safely continue. As they sat by the fire that night, Quinn unfolded a tattered map, tracing their route with his finger. "If they keep to the main trails, they'll reach Rock Springs in about 4 days," he said. "But there's a shortcut through these canyons that could save us nearly a day." "Is it dangerous?" Nora asked. "It's narrow in places and there's a risk of flash floods if it rains," Quinn admitted. "But this time of year it should be dry." Nora studied the map. "My father and I used to hunt in canyons like these. The echo can play tricks on you." Quinn looked up, a flicker of respect in his eyes. "You've got good instincts, Miss Walton. That'll serve you well out here." "Please call me Nora," she said, suddenly self-conscious under his gaze. "Miss Walton makes me feel like a schoolteacher." A small smile curved Quinn's lips. "Nora, then. And I suppose you'd better call me Adam, since we're going to be traveling together for a while yet." Something warm unfurled in Nora's chest at the sound of her name on his lips. She quickly looked away, focusing on the map. "When do we enter the canyon?" "Tomorrow, midday." Adam replied. We'll need to be careful. The Blackwells won't expect anyone to follow them this quickly, but they're not fools. They might have left someone to watch their back trail. Nora nodded, trying to ignore the flutter of fear in her stomach. I'll be ready. Adam studied her for a moment, then reached into his saddlebag and pulled out a revolver. He checked it carefully before offering it to her, handle first. You know how to use this? Nora took the weapon, feeling its weight in her hand. My father taught me. Said a woman alone needs to be able to protect herself. He was right, Adam said. I hope you won't need it, but I'd feel better knowing you can defend yourself if necessary. Nora tucked the gun into her belt. Thank you. Try to get some sleep, Adam advised, banking the fire. Dawn comes early out here. Nora lay awake for some time, listening to the night sounds of the desert, the distant howl of a coyote, the rustle of small creatures in the underbrush, the soft breathing of the horses. She was acutely aware of Adam's presence a few feet away, his tall form silhouetted against the star-filled sky. What would happen, she wondered, when they caught up to the Blackwell Gang? Adam clearly intended to bring them to justice, but what form would that justice take? And what would become of her once it was done? The thought of returning to Moab, to a life of washing other people's laundry and serving their meals, filled her with a curious emptiness. She finally drifted into a restless sleep, haunted by dreams of gunfire and her father's vacant eyes. Morning brought with it a new determination. As they packed up camp, Nora noticed Adam watching her with an appraising eye. You're different from most women I've met, he observed as they mounted their horses. Is that good or bad? Nora asked, adjusting her hat against the rising sun. Neither. Just an observation. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Most city women would have fainted dead away at the thought of chasing outlaws across the territory. I'm not a city woman, Nora reminded him. I was born out here. This land is in my blood. Adam nodded, his eyes thoughtful. I can see that. They rode in companionable silence, the rhythm of the horses' hooves a steady backdrop to their journey. By midday, the landscape began to change, the open desert giving way to towering red rock formations that seemed to touch the cloudless sky. There, Adam said, pointing ahead. That's the entrance to Crimson Canyon. The narrow opening between two massive rock walls looked barely wide enough for a horse and rider to pass through. Nora felt a momentary twinge of claustrophobia at the thought of being enclosed by so much stone. It opens up once we're inside, Adam assured her, noting her hesitation. But we'll need to ride single file for the first quarter mile or so. Adam took the lead, his experienced eyes scanning the rocky terrain for any signs of danger. Nora followed close behind, marveling at the way the sunlight filtered down in golden shafts between the high walls. The canyon did indeed widen after the initial narrow passage, opening into a breathtaking corridor of striated red and orange rock. A small stream trickled along one side, evidence of past floods that had carved this natural wonder. It's beautiful, Nora murmured, her voice echoing slightly off the stone walls. Adam glanced back at her, his expression softening momentarily. These canyons have their own kind of magic. My people, my mother's people, believed they were sacred places where the spirit world touched our own. Your mother was native? Nora asked, surprised. Adam nodded. Ute. My father was an Irish immigrant who worked as a trapper. They met when he was brought to her village with a broken leg. She nursed him back to health and they fell in love. His eyes held a distant look. It wasn't an easy life for either of them. The whites didn't accept her and her tribe didn't fully accept him. But they had each other, Nora said softly. Yes, Adam agreed. Until the fever took them both when I was 16. I'm sorry, Nora said, understanding all too well the pain of losing parents. Adam shrugged, his face resuming its usual stoic expression. It was a long time ago. They continued through the canyon, Adam occasionally pointing out tracks that confirmed the Blackwell Gang had indeed taken the main trail to Rock Springs. By late afternoon, they had made good progress, covering nearly 20 miles through the twisting passages of the canyon. "We'll make camp here," Adam decided, indicating a small alcove sheltered by an overhanging rock. "There's water nearby and we'll be protected from the wind." As they set up camp, Nora found herself watching Adam's efficient movements, the way his hands worked with quiet confidence, the grace with which he moved despite his size. There was something compelling about him, a quiet strength that drew her like a moth to flame. "You're staring," Adam observed without looking up from the fire he was building. Nora felt heat rise in her cheeks. "I was just thinking about how different you are from what I expected," she admitted. This caught his attention. He looked up, one eyebrow raised in question. "And what did you expect exactly?" "I don't know. Someone rougher, I suppose, less." She gestured vaguely, searching for the right word. "Less what?" Adam prompted, amusement flickering in his eyes. "Thoughtful," Nora finally said. "You notice things, you listen." Adam's expression sobered. "Those are useful traits for a tracker." "They're useful traits for a person," Nora countered. She hesitated, then added, "Thank you for not sending me back to Moab." Adam studied her for a long moment, the firelight casting shadows across his face. "You're welcome." "Though I'm still not convinced it was the right decision." "It was," Nora said firmly. "This is my fight too." They ate a simple meal of beans and jerky, sitting side by side against the canyon wall. As night settled fully around them, the stars emerged, brilliant and countless against the velvet darkness. "My father used to tell me stories about the stars," Nora said, gazing upward. "He said they were the eyes of angels watching over us." "My mother had a different story," Adam replied. "She said they were the campfires of our ancestors, lighting the way home for lost souls." "I like that," Nora said softly. "Do you think they're watching over us now, our parents?" Adam was quiet for so long that Nora thought he might not answer. Finally, he said, "I hope so. I'd like to think they'd be proud of what we're trying to do." "Justice isn't something to be ashamed of," Nora observed. "It depends on how it's served," Adam said, his voice taking on an edge. "Revenge and justice aren't always the same thing." Nora turned to look at him, sensing the conflict within him. "What are you planning to do when we find the Blackwells?" Adam's jaw tightened. "I'm going to make sure they can't hurt anyone else. By killing them, if necessary." Nora absorbed this, trying to reconcile the gentle man beside her with the determination to do violence. "And if I asked you not to? If I asked you to help me get back what's mine and then turn them over to the law?" Adam's eyes met hers, their gray depths unreadable in the firelight. "Would you ask that of me? After what they did to your father, to my sister?" Nora hesitated. The truth was, she had fantasized about seeing Clayton Blackwell and his men pay for their crimes. But the thought of Adam becoming a killer for her sake troubled her deeply. "I want justice," she said finally. "Real justice, not just more bloodshed." Adam's expression remained impassive, but something flickered in his eyes, respect, perhaps, or understanding. "We'll see what happens when we find them," he said, neither a promise nor a denial. The conversation lapsed into silence, each lost in their own thoughts as the fire burned low. Eventually, Adam stood and added more wood to the flames. "You should get some sleep," he said. "I'll take first watch." "Wake me for the second watch," Nora insisted. "You need rest too." Adam looked like he might argue, then nodded. "I'll wake you in 4 hours." Nora wrapped herself in her blanket, watching as Adam settled with his back against the canyon wall, rifle across his lap. Despite the hard ground beneath her, sleep came quickly, drawn by exhaustion and the strange sense of security provided by Adam's vigilant presence. True to his word, Adam woke her 4 hours later. The night had grown colder, and Nora pulled her blanket around her shoulders as she took up her position by the fire. "Anything I should watch for?" she asked in a whisper. "Movement, unusual sounds," Adam replied. "Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is." Nora nodded, tightening her grip on the revolver he had given her. "I'll wake you at first light." Adam hesitated, then squeezed her shoulder briefly. "You'll do fine." The simple touch sent a ripple of warmth through Nora that had nothing to do with the fire. She watched as Adam settled into his bedroll, his breathing soon evening out into the rhythm of sleep. The hours of her watch passed slowly. Nora found herself studying Adam's face in repose, noting how the hard lines softened in sleep, making him look younger and more vulnerable. She wondered what kind of life he had led, moving from place to place, never settling down. It seemed a lonely existence. As promised, she woke him at first light, the canyon walls glowing with the pink and gold hues of dawn. Adam roused instantly, his hand reaching for his rifle before he was fully awake. "All quiet?" he asked, his voice rough with sleep. Nora nodded. "Nothing but a few night creatures and the wind." They broke camp efficiently, eating a cold breakfast of hardtack and dried fruit before saddling the horses. The day promised to be hot, with not a cloud in the brilliant blue sky. "How much farther through the canyon?" Nora asked as they mounted up. "Should reach the northern exit by midday," Adam replied. "Then it's open country to Rock Springs. If we push hard, we could be there by tomorrow evening." They rode in single file through the narrower passages, the only sounds the clip-clop of hooves on stone and the occasional call of a hawk circling high above. Around mid-morning, Adam suddenly raised his hand, signaling a halt. Nora reined in beside him. "What is it?" Adam pointed to the ground where several sets of hoofprints were clearly visible in a patch of sandy soil. "Fresh tracks, no more than a few hours old." "The Blackwells." Adam dismounted, crouching to examine the tracks more closely. 5 horses, heavily loaded, has to be them. He looked up, his expression grim. "They're moving faster than I expected." "Can we catch up to them?" "Maybe," Adam said, swinging back into the saddle. "But we need to be careful. If they realize they're being followed, they might set up an ambush." They continued on, Adam setting a faster pace while still keeping a vigilant eye on their surroundings. The canyon began to widen, the walls gradually lowering until they could see the open sky above. Just as the canyon opened into a broad valley, Adam again signaled a stop. This time, he dismounted and led his horse behind a large boulder, gesturing for Nora to do the same. "What?" Nora began, but Adam pressed a finger to his lips, silencing her question. Carefully, he peered around the edge of the boulder. Nora followed his gaze and saw, about a quarter-mile ahead, a small camp set beside a stream. Even at this distance, she could make out several figures moving around a cookfire. "Is it them?" she whispered. Adam nodded, his jaw set in a hard line. "They've stopped to rest their horses. Probably planning to ride through the night to reach Rock Springs." Nora's heart pounded against her ribs. After weeks of searching, they had finally found the men who had destroyed her life. She studied the distant camp, trying to identify individual figures. "I count 4, she said. "Weren't there 5? Adam's eyes narrowed as he scanned the area. "The 5th might be keeping watch. We need to be careful." "What's the plan?" Nora asked, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her veins. Adam considered for a moment. "We wait until dark. They'll be easier to approach then, and we'll have the element of surprise. And then I'm going to get back what they stole from you," Adam said simply. They retreated further into the canyon, finding a sheltered spot where they could rest and prepare for the night ahead. As the sun began its descent toward the western horizon, Adam checked his weapons methodically: a Remington revolver, a Winchester rifle, and a hunting knife strapped to his thigh. Watching him, Nora felt a flutter of anxiety. "You're planning to go in alone, aren't you?" Adam nodded without looking up. "It's safer that way." "For whom?" Nora challenged. "You're one man against 5. "I'm one man they won't be expecting," Adam countered, "and I've done this kind of thing before. During the war," a shadow crossed his face, "and after. It's not something I'm proud of, but I know how to move quietly and strike quickly." Nora bit her lip, torn between fear for his safety and frustration at being left behind. What if something goes wrong? What if they catch you? Adam finally looked up, his gray eyes meeting hers. "If I'm not back by dawn, take the horses and ride to Rock Springs. Find the sheriff there and tell him everything." "I'm not going to leave you," Nora said firmly. Adam sighed, setting down his rifle. "Nora, listen to me. These men are killers. They won't hesitate to put a bullet in me, and they'd do worse to you. The best way you can help is by staying here, keeping the horses quiet, and being ready to ride if necessary." Nora wanted to argue, but she recognized the logic in his words. "Fine," she said reluctantly. "But promise me you'll be careful." "I'm always careful," Adam replied with a faint smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. As darkness fell, Adam made final preparations for his mission. He removed his spurs and anything else that might make noise, rubbed dirt on his face to reduce the reflection of his skin in the moonlight, and checked his weapons one last time. "Remember," he said to Nora, his voice low, "if I'm not back by dawn, I know," Nora interrupted. "But you will be." Adam paused, studying her face in the dim starlight. Then, in a move that caught her completely by surprise, he leaned forward and pressed a brief, gentle kiss to her forehead. "For luck," he murmured, then turned and melted into the darkness before she could respond. Nora touched her fingers to the spot where his lips had been, her heart racing with emotions she couldn't quite name. Then she settled back against the canyon wall to begin her vigil, the weight of Adam's revolver a reassuring presence at her side. Time passed with excruciating slowness. Nora strained her ears for any sound that might indicate what was happening at the Blackwell camp, but the night remained stubbornly silent. The moon rose, casting silver light across the canyon floor, and still Adam did not return. Just when Nora was beginning to fear the worst, the silence was shattered by the crack of a gunshot, followed by several more in quick succession. Shouts echoed across the valley, and Nora saw the flicker of increased firelight from the direction of the camp. Her first instinct was to run toward the commotion, to help Adam in whatever way she could. But she forced herself to stay put, remembering his instructions. Moving would only put them both in greater danger. More gunfire erupted, along with the sounds of men yelling and horses neighing in panic. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, silence fell once more. Nora's heart hammered in her chest as she peered into the darkness, searching for any sign of movement. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours, with no indication of what had happened or who had prevailed in the gunfight. Then she heard the soft scuff of a boot on stone, approaching from her left. Nora raised the revolver, her hand trembling slightly as she aimed into the darkness. "Don't shoot," came Adam's familiar voice, low and strained. "It's me." Nora lowered the gun, relief flooding through her as Adam's tall form materialized from the shadows. But her relief turned to alarm when she saw the awkward way he was moving, one hand pressed to his side. "You're hurt," she gasped, rushing to his side. "It's not bad," Adam said, though the tightness in his voice belied his words. "Just a graze." In the moonlight, Nora could see the dark stain spreading across his shirt. "Let me see," she demanded, helping him sit against the canyon wall. With gentle fingers, she unbuttoned his shirt, revealing a bloody furrow across his ribs. The wound was shallow but bleeding freely. "You need stitches," she said, already reaching for her canteen to clean the injury. "Later," Adam said, catching her wrist. "We need to move." "I only got 3 of them. 2 escaped Clayton and 1 other. Which way did they go?" "North, toward Rock Springs. They took most of the horses, but I managed to get this." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small silver object that caught the moonlight. Nora's breath caught in her throat. "My mother's locket." Adam placed it in her palm, closing her fingers around it. "I found this too." He produced a folded document from inside his shirt. "The deed to your father's claim, and this." A small leather pouch clinked with the sound of coins. "It's not everything they took, but it's a start." Tears welled in Nora's eyes as she clutched the locket to her chest. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Adam nodded, his face tight with pain. "We need to tend to that wound and then get moving. Clayton won't stop until he reaches Rock Springs, and I want to be there when he arrives." Nora worked quickly, cleaning the wound with water and whiskey from Adam's flask, then binding it with strips torn from her petticoat. Throughout the process, Adam remained stoic, only the occasional hiss of breath betraying his discomfort. "That should hold until we can get you to a proper doctor," Nora said, securing the last of the bandages. Adam touched the binding gingerly, then nodded his approval. "You have gentle hands," he observed. Nora felt her cheeks warm at the compliment. "My mother was a healer. She taught me a few things before she passed." Adam studied her face in the moonlight, his expression softening. "You're a remarkable woman, Nora Walton." Before she could respond, he struggled to his feet. "We should get moving. Dawn's only a few hours away, and we have ground to cover." They rode through the remainder of the night, leaving the canyon behind and crossing the open plains toward Rock Springs. Adam set a punishing pace despite his injury, his determination to catch Clayton Blackwell evident in every tense line of his body. As the eastern sky began to lighten with the first hints of dawn, Nora noticed Adam swaying slightly in his saddle. She urged her horse alongside his. "You need to rest," she said firmly. "You've lost blood and you've been riding all night." Adam shook his head stubbornly. "We're only a few hours from Rock Springs. Clayton will be looking to sell that claim as quickly as possible. We can't give him that chance." "You won't be any good to anyone if you fall out of the saddle," Nora argued. "Just a short rest, please." Something in her voice must have reached him because Adam finally nodded. 1 hour, no more. They stopped beside a small stream where the horses could drink while they rested. Adam eased himself down from the saddle with a poorly suppressed groan, his face pale beneath his tan. Nora helped him sit with his back against a cottonwood tree, then checked his bandages. To her relief, the bleeding had slowed, though the wound still looked angry and painful. "Eat something," she instructed, handing him jerky and hardtack from their supplies. "You need your strength." Adam accepted the food without argument, a sign of how exhausted he truly was. As he ate, Nora opened her mother's locket, gazing at the tiny portrait inside. The familiar face, so like her own, brought a fresh wave of grief and gratitude. "She was beautiful," Adam observed softly. Nora nodded, blinking back tears. "She died of fever 3 years ago. This locket was the last gift my father gave her before she passed." She closed it carefully and slipped the chain around her neck, where the silver heart nestled against her skin. "I can never repay you for getting it back." "You don't need to," Adam said simply. They rested for exactly 1 hour, no more, no less. By the time they mounted up again, Adam looked marginally better. Some color returned to his face. The morning was well advanced when they crested a rise and saw rock springs spread before them in the valley below. It was larger than Moab, with several streets of wooden buildings and a proper train station at the far end of town. Smoke rose from numerous chimneys, and even at this distance, they could see the bustle of activity in the main street. Where would Clayton go first? Nora asked as they approached the town. "If I know him, he'll head for the land office," Adam replied. "He'll want to register that claim in his name as quickly as possible." They rode directly to the sheriff's office, a small building near the center of town with a weathered sign and a hitching post out front. Inside, they found a portly man with a graying mustache sitting behind a desk, reading a newspaper. He looked up as they entered, his eyebrows rising at their dusty, travel-worn appearance and Adam's blood-stained shirt. "Can I help you folks, Sheriff?" Adam said, his voice carrying the authority of a man accustomed to command. "My name is Adam Quinn. This is Miss Nora Walton. We're tracking 2 members of the Blackwell Gang who we believe arrived in town earlier today." The sheriff's expression sharpened with interest. "The Blackwells, you say? Clayton Blackwell?" "That's right," Nora confirmed. "They murdered my father and stole our property, including the deed to our silver claim in the LaSalle Mountains." The sheriff stood, reaching for his hat. "As it happens, I had 2 men register a claim at the land office not 2 hours ago. Description matches what I've heard of Clayton Blackwell and his brother Silas. Said they were headed to the Golden Nugget Saloon afterward." Adam's jaw tightened. "We need to move quickly. Clayton won't stay in one place for long." "Hold on now," the sheriff cautioned. "Clayton Blackwell is wanted in 3 territories. If he's here, we need to handle this proper-like. No vigilante justice in my town." "We're not looking for vigilante justice," Nora said quickly, placing a restraining hand on Adam's arm. "We just want what was stolen from us returned." The sheriff considered them for a moment, then nodded. "All right, but we do this my way. I'll deputize Mr. Quinn here and we'll go together to the Golden Nugget. Miss Walton, you'll wait here where it's safe." "No," Nora said firmly. "This is my fight too. I'm coming with you." The sheriff looked like he might argue, but something in Nora's expression must have convinced him of her determination. "Stay behind us then. And if there's trouble, you get yourself to safety." "Understood," Nora nodded, though she had no intention of running if Adam was in danger. The Golden Nugget Saloon was typical of its kind, a large room dominated by a long bar, with tables scattered throughout and a small stage at the far end. Despite the early hour, it was nearly half full, miners and cowboys drinking and playing cards. The sheriff paused in the doorway, scanning the room. "There," he said quietly, nodding toward a corner table. "The man with the black hat and the fellow with the red kerchief." Nora followed his gaze and felt her blood run cold. Clayton Blackwell looked exactly as she remembered, tall and lean, with cold eyes and a cruel twist to his mouth. The memory of him standing over her father's body flashed before her eyes, and she had to force herself to breathe normally. "Let me handle this," the sheriff murmured, then strode confidently toward the table, his hand resting casually on the butt of his revolver. Adam and Nora followed, staying a few paces behind. As they approached, Clayton looked up, his expression changing from annoyance to alarm as he recognized Adam. "Clayton Blackwell," the sheriff announced loudly, causing conversations throughout the saloon to cease. "You and your brother Silas are under arrest for murder, theft, and claim jumping." Clayton's hand moved toward his gun, but the sheriff was faster, drawing his weapon and aiming it squarely at Clayton's chest. "Don't try it, Blackwell. There's nowhere to run." For a tense moment, it seemed Clayton might risk a shootout anyway. Then, his eyes cold with hatred, he slowly raised his hands. "This is a mistake, Sheriff," he said smoothly. "My brother and I are legitimate businessmen. We purchased that claim fair and square." "From whom?" Adam challenged, stepping forward. "From James Walton, after you shot him in cold blood." Clayton's eyes narrowed as they shifted to Nora. "The daughter," he said, recognition dawning. "I thought we'd taken care of you too." "You failed," Nora said, her voice steady despite the hatred burning in her chest. "Just like you'll fail to profit from my father's claim." The sheriff motioned for Clayton and Silas to stand. "Empty your pockets, slowly." The brothers complied, placing several items on the table: money, a pocket watch, a small leather-bound book, and the deed to the Walton claim, now bearing Clayton's forged signature. "That's my father's watch," Nora said, pointing to the gold timepiece. "And what proof do you have of that?" Clayton sneered. Nora stepped forward, picking up the watch and opening it. Inside the case, just as she knew it would be, was a small inscription. "To James, with love always, Elizabeth." "This is all the proof I need," she said, holding the watch to her chest. The sheriff nodded. "I'll need statements from both of you for the territorial judge. These men will hang for what they've done, especially after what happened to those settlers outside Green River last month." As the sheriff led the Blackwell brothers away, Nora felt a curious emptiness where her anger had been. Justice would be served, but it wouldn't bring her father back or erase the memory of that terrible day. Adam placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "It's over," he said softly. Nora looked up at him, tears blurring her vision. "Is it? What happens now?" Before Adam could answer, he swayed slightly, his face going pale. "Adam," Nora said in alarm, reaching out to steady him. "I think maybe I need that doctor after all," he admitted, pressing a hand to his side where fresh blood was seeping through the bandages. The town doctor, a gruff but competent man named Parker, cleaned and stitched Adam's wound, declaring him lucky that the bullet had only grazed his ribs rather than penetrating deeper. "Keep it clean and try not to tear those stitches," he instructed as he finished bandaging Adam's torso. "And for God's sake, rest for a few days before you go chasing any more outlaws." Nora had insisted on staying throughout the procedure, holding Adam's hand when the pain of the stitching made him grit his teeth. Now, as the doctor left them alone in the small examination room, she found herself reluctant to let go of his fingers. "Thank you," she said softly, "for everything." Adam's gray eyes met hers, a warmth in them that she hadn't seen before. "You don't need to thank me, Nora. I did what needed doing. You risked your life for me, for my father's memory." She shook her head, overwhelmed by the enormity of his sacrifice. "I don't know how I'll ever repay you." "You don't need to repay me," Adam said. His hand tightened around hers. "But I do have a question for you." "What's that? What will you do now? Will you go back to Moab?" Nora hesitated, considering the question. "I don't know. There's nothing left for me there except painful memories. I could try to work the claim, I suppose, but—" She trailed off, the reality of her situation dawning on her. A woman alone had few options in this harsh land. "You could sell it," Adam suggested. "Start fresh somewhere else." "Perhaps," Nora agreed, though the thought brought little comfort. Where would she go? What would she do? Adam seemed to read the uncertainty in her expression. "Or," he said, his voice taking on a hesitant quality she'd never heard from him before, "you could consider a different path." "What do you mean?" Adam took a deep breath, wincing slightly as the movement pulled at his stitches. "I've been thinking about settling down. Finding a place to put down roots." Nora's heart skipped a beat. "You have," he nodded, a hint of vulnerability in his eyes. "I'm tired of drifting, Nora, tired of being alone. These past days with you," he broke off, seeming to search for the right words. "I've never met anyone like you. Your courage, your determination, your heart, you make me want to be a better man." "Adam," Nora breathed, hardly daring to believe what she was hearing. "I know it's sudden," he continued quickly, "and I know you have every right to tell me I'm a fool for even suggesting this. But I care for you, Nora, more than I thought possible in such a short time." Tears welled in Nora's eyes. "I care for you too," she whispered. Hope flared in Adam's gaze. "Then would you consider staying with me? Not necessarily as my wife, not right away, that would be presumptuous. But perhaps as my partner. We could work the claim together or sell it and buy a ranch. Whatever you want." Nora felt a smile breaking across her face like the dawn. "Are you proposing a business arrangement, Adam Quinn?" A slow, answering smile lifted the corners of his mouth. "For now. But I have hopes for more in time, if you're willing." Nora leaned forward, pressing her forehead gently against his. "I'm willing," she said softly. "More than willing." Adam's hand came up to cup her cheek, his touch reverent. "I promise to protect you, Nora, to never let anyone hurt you again." "And I promise to stand by your side," Nora replied, "through whatever comes our way." Slowly, with the care of a man afraid of breaking something precious, Adam tilted his head and pressed his lips to hers. The kiss was gentle at first, a question more than a demand. But when Nora responded, her hand coming up to rest against his chest, it deepened into something more profound, a promise, a beginning. When they finally parted, Adam rested his forehead against hers. "I think I've been looking for you my whole life," he murmured. Nora smiled, her heart full to bursting. "And I've been waiting for you even when I didn't know it." In the days that followed, they made plans for their future. The territorial judge arrived in Rock Springs, and Nora testified against Clayton and Silas Blackwell, recounting the terrible events at her homestead with a steady voice. Adam stood beside her throughout the proceedings, his quiet strength a comfort she had come to rely on. The judge sentenced the Blackwell brothers to hang, a fate that brought Nora no joy but a sense of closure. Justice had been served, and now she could look forward rather than back. With the money recovered from the Blackwells and the sale of her father's claim to a mining company, Nora and Adam purchased a small ranch 20 miles outside Rock Springs. The land was good, with a year-round stream and ample grazing for the horses they planned to raise. They were married on a clear autumn day, with the aspen trees turning gold on the surrounding hills. The ceremony was small, just the local preacher, Sheriff Thomas and his wife, and a few friends they had made in town. Nora wore a simple white dress ordered from Denver, and Adam wore a new suit that made him look so handsome her breath caught in her throat when she saw him. "You are the bravest, most beautiful woman I have ever known," Adam whispered as they danced under the stars that night. "I will spend every day of my life trying to be worthy of you." Nora smiled up at her husband, her heart full to overflowing. "You already are, my love. You already are." Their first year on the ranch was hard work, as all beginnings are. They built corrals and barns, planted a garden, and began breeding the fine horses that would eventually make the Quinn Ranch known throughout the territory. Adam's knowledge of horses, combined with Nora's keen eye for bloodlines, proved to be a successful partnership in business as well as in love. In the spring of their second year, Nora discovered she was with child. Adam's joy at the news was boundless. He built a cradle with his own hands, carving delicate designs of horses and mountains into the wood. Their son, James Adam Quinn, was born on a snowy December night in 1878, with Adam pacing anxiously outside the bedroom door while the midwife attended Nora. When he was finally allowed to see his wife and son, Adam wept unashamedly, cradling the tiny boy in his arms with a tenderness that made Nora fall in love with him all over again. "He has your eyes," Adam whispered, tracing a gentle finger along the baby's cheek. "And your chin," Nora replied, exhausted but radiant with happiness. "He'll be strong and brave like his father, and compassionate and wise like his mother," Adam added, sitting carefully on the edge of the bed to wrap his free arm around Nora. As little James grew, so did the ranch. They added more land, more horses, and eventually built a larger house to accommodate their expanding family. Thomas William Quinn arrived 2 years after his brother, followed by Elizabeth Grace 3 years later. Life was not without its challenges. There were droughts and harsh winters, disagreements and moments of doubt. But through it all, Adam and Nora faced each trial together, their bond growing stronger with each passing year. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Adam presented Nora with a gift, a silver locket to match the one that had been her mother's. Inside, he had placed a tiny portrait of their family. "To replace what was taken," he said, clasping it around her neck. "Though nothing could ever truly replace what you lost." Nora touched the locket, tears welling in her eyes. "You've given me so much more than what was taken, Adam. You've given me a home, a family, a life filled with love." Adam pulled her close, his arms as strong and sure as they had been on that day in the canyon when he had first held her. "And you've given me purpose, Nora Quinn, a reason to be a better man than I ever thought I could be." As they stood together on the porch of their home, watching their children play in the yard and the sun set over the mountains, Nora knew with absolute certainty that this was where she belonged. The path that had led her here had been marked by loss and pain, but it had brought her to a love deeper and truer than she had ever imagined possible. In the years that followed, the Quinn Ranch prospered, becoming one of the most respected horse breeding operations in Wyoming Territory. Their children grew strong and capable, each finding their own path while maintaining the close bonds of family. James followed in his father's footsteps, learning the business of horse breeding with a natural aptitude that made Adam burst with pride. Thomas had a gift for storytelling, and eventually became a journalist for the territorial newspaper. Elizabeth, with her mother's determination and her father's quiet strength, studied medicine in Denver before returning to establish the first proper hospital in Rock Springs. As they grew older, Nora and Adam gradually turned over the daily operations of the ranch to James and his wife, though they remained actively involved well into their later years. Their home became a gathering place for family, friends, and neighbors, known for its warm hospitality and the enduring love of its owners. On cool evenings, they would often sit together on the porch swing, Adam's arm around Nora's shoulders as they watched the sunset paint the sky in brilliant hues of orange and purple. Sometimes they would speak of the past, of the terrible day that had brought them together and the journey that had followed. But more often, they would simply sit in comfortable silence, grateful for each day they had been given together. "I never thought I could be this happy," Nora confessed on one such evening, her head resting against Adam's shoulder. "After what happened to my father, I thought my life was over, but it was just beginning." Adam pressed a kiss to her silver-streaked hair, now as familiar to him as his own reflection. "Everything I have, everything I am, I owe to you," he said softly. "You saved me, Nora Quinn." She smiled up at him, the love in her eyes undimmed by the passing years. "We saved each other. And I would do it all again, every moment, if it meant ending up here with you." As the stars emerged in the darkening sky, Adam and Nora Quinn remained on their porch, wrapped in the warmth of a love that had begun in violence and blossomed into something beautiful and enduring. They had built a legacy of strength and compassion, of courage and devotion that would live on long after they were gone. And in the quiet moments between sunset and full dark, they were still the same two people who had found each other in the vast wilderness of the West, a brave young woman who had lost everything, and a solitary tracker who had returned not only her possessions but her hope for the future. Their story, like the land they loved, was both harsh and beautiful, challenging and rewarding, a testament to the power of love to transform even the darkest moments into the brightest of beginnings.